This is Jeremiah. Welcome, welcome. This is Jeremiah. And you just tuned into New Covenant. New Covenant. And this is Science 2021. And I have finished a review of my old science that I decided to give a review. There's a lot of science available for those of you who are interested in biblical science. Now, I do have some things that I have what might be called conjecture. However, I am happy with my assertions. And an older gentleman who has studied science and the Bible for a long time, and I'm not saying I'm some sort of expert, it's just that Jeremiah is going to give you some truths. He's going to reveal things to you that's becoming more and more common amongst the brethren. In other words, the Lord shows things to people, to his prophets. And I just so happen to be one of his prophets. And here's the point. The point is that we have to get into things that are going to be a little uncomfortable today. I'm going to get into some current issues. I'm going to get into what we might call Laodicean conditions. In other words, science has a lot to do with money and the pre-tribulation situation. Okay, in other words, science is going to be used by the devil. God is allowing the beast and the harlot to develop science. He's allowing them to do it. It's kind of like their last hurrah. And the thing is that although it's their hour, so to speak, God, when he drops the hammer, it's not going to be good for any of these participants. People who are high on themselves, people who worship humans and animals and pagan and so forth, pagan issues, and they twist things as heretics, and they have hedonism, sensuality outside of marriage, and so forth. All of this is bad news for the people who are practicing it. Okay, that's the point. This is Jeremiah in New Covenant. I'm going to get into that today. Okay. And we greet you in the only name given amongst men by which you must be saved. Pardon me. And that's the only name given amongst men. And we do everything in that name. Okay? And let's get right into this. This will be video either 9 or 1. I haven't decided. And of course, this is piggybacking on science. And I decided to go off the page a little bit and get into what are the scientific, or what are the facts, the physical facts of pre-tribulation. Now, I have pre-tribulation lessons here for you, and I am going to have to go through those again. There were some issues pertaining to uploading those. And I'll just share that with you. I'm not going to share all the details with you, but I just wanted to share that with you, that the pre-tribulation lessons, there's been a problem and so forth, and I'm going to get that squared away, and I apologize if you've been going through that. But I want to go through a little bit of science and current situations, because science has to deal with a lot of things that deal with money, banking. You can't produce fake Photoshop atomic bombs and fake planes and going into 9/11. You can't do this without a lot of money. You can't make neutrino bombs, which is probably what was used on the Twin Towers, which is why there was no rubble at the base. Here's the point. The point is that it takes a lot of money to fool people. And God is going to let people who want to be fooled, he's going to let you be fooled. And that's the bottom line. It's the same thing with Adam and Eve. If the devil comes by your house like a roaring lion, offering you sensuality outside of marriage, violence, whatever, God's going to let you dig in. And we're here to push righteousness and holiness and purity and kindness, which is the antithesis of all of this, nonviolence. Okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit about current science, just a little bit, and things that are going on right now politically too. It's time to talk just a little bit of politics. and not much, because I am not, I don't even vote, so, or I'm not prone to vote. I'm not really that much into politics at all. However, I'm not ignorant of the practices that the leaders are supporting, okay? I keep track pretty much of what the candidates and what they do in office a little bit. So, and I want to talk about this just a little bit today. It upsets people because people are very emotional about politics. They have what's dementia. You know, they're mentally retarded in many ways, and they have alexia. They have emotion, you know, and affectations toward things that they shouldn't have. You know, oh, I feel emotional about this and emotional about that, and I'm upset, and I support this guy, and see, and to me, it's a big problem because the Bible talks about submitting to the authorities, submit to the authorities, and support the church. And a lot of people don't understand that. Now, does it mean that you can't vote or something like that? No, that's not my point. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, okay? But let's get back into our conditions right now. I want to talk about that politically, socially, economically, just a little bit. Then I'm going to show you some pictures that support some new science and new politics and where we stand with politics. And also, I wanted to remind you that at the beginning of this ministry, at the introduction, and some of you have already looked at it, and you who have subscribed, you've already heard. So, you know, that I want this to be an adult ministry. I'm going to have to show pictures, a few pictures of some abortion and so forth, and to bring home the point. Let me touch on abortion just for one moment, because that's kind of a big issue here, okay? And for us Christians, it is. And here's the thing. We don't want to show pictures of abortion, but we do it to show what's going on. Because that's called actualization and reality. You understand? You can't hide from reality. I've watched many a debate on TV when I was young for someone who was supporting abortion and someone who was opposed. But I never saw them show a film of what happens during an abortion. I've never seen them. And isn't that odd that we wouldn't see what they're arguing about when we have cameras that can show you what they're talking about? You understand what I'm saying? And that's also why I'm saying that this is an adult ministry. This is not for toddlers. We have to deal with homosexuality, perversion every now and then, such as the Vatican has admitted to all these weird murders and slaughters and torture chambers that are under the Vatican. I have some pictures of those. I didn't bring those pictures. I have some pictures of some torture chambers of the Vatican that was used for hundreds of years on people. And so, listen, we're here to deal with reality. As I mentioned to you, that this ministry is winding down. Although we deal with a few tough issues here recently, we're winding down into beauty. We're getting into beauty as a big issue for us. That's lesson 120 and 119 and so forth. As these videos progress and we get to the end, we get to 120 something and whatever, we're going to get into all beauty. It's going to be all beauty. I'm going to just keep going, and we're going to talk about mercy and compassion and the beauty of heaven, and we're going to have some fun extrapolating. I'm going to share with you some of my music. I write music. I'm going to share some of my music with you. And so far I'm having vocal issues, but let's get into today's lesson. Today's lesson is talking about Laodicean conditions. What are our conditions right now? And I'm going to get into that, okay? Laodicean conditions, which is part of what we might call Science Part 2. Okay? And let's get started. Because we're going to talk about the science of an abortion a little bit. We're going to talk about what actually happens a little. And it's very uncomfortable, but we have to do it. It's a very popular thing. $1 million is spent every day of your tax money on abortions every day here in the United States. Now, I think it's slacked off quite a bit, but I'm not sure. I hope it has. But this is a very, very big issue for us, and why we Protestant Christians generally up here in the North why we vote Republican. That's one of the reasons why we vote when we vote. I don't vote that much at all, but if I did vote, it would probably be Republican, and that would be probably the main reason. So we can stop and save the babies. There was a famous song by a soul singer. He said, "Save the babies," and I'm all for that. Okay? Let's get into 2021 Laodicean conditions, okay? So I want to talk about the great harlot and the beast. Now, in Revelation chapter 17, we have two entities that are powerful. And one is the harlot, and the harlot is riding the beast. And the Bible is telling you that the harlot is controlling the beast. If you go to the UN right now, you'll see a giant statue about as big as a mountain in there of the Pope. I think it's the past Pope, I don't remember. But the statue of the Pope is about as big as Mount Rushmore in the UN. Okay, that's telling you right there who the great harlot is, and that's the harlot and Babylon that's riding the beast. The harlot is riding the beast, and that harlot is full of abominations and sensualities pertaining to illegal sensualities. That's what the Bible is telling you. In other words, they get high on murder, slaughter, and perversions. They get high on it. It's something they're addicted to. It's their joy. And the infrastructure for Agenda 21 is preparing for them to take over. God's going to let them take over. That's what the tribulation period is about. It's about the first beast and the second beast. And both of these beasts are working with the harlot. Now the second beast apparently is going to cut off the harlot, because the second beast wants to be worshipped with the red dragon as the only God and so forth, entering the temple, which is Daniel's abomination of desolation. Okay. Which is probably 69th to 70th week of Daniel and so forth. We won't get into that, but let's get into the infrastructure of Agenda 21. Now, the UN has promised to restructure and reapportion land everywhere, whether you like it or not. And there will be no local police department. There's going to be one police. That's the United Nations Police. And a lot of people don't know about this, but it's right there. They even passed the pamphlet out. You can go to the UN, and I don't know if they charge you for the pamphlet, but they tell you the infrastructure they're going to introduce. You can't go to certain places because you're going to destroy the plants and animals and so forth, and you're going to have to eat certain foods, and so on. And of course, we see the power of the harlot with the beast way back, far back. When Jesus was murdered, he was murdered by the harlot, which was Babylon, which was the Hebrew leaders, and the beast, which was the Roman soldiers and the government. Nothing changes. It just changes faces and changes names. The names are changed, that's all. And the infrastructure for Agenda 21 appears to be in stone. They are very serious about taking over and giving all sovereignty of nations over to the United Nations and restructuring for the benefit of everybody involved, supposedly. And that's what you have with the white horse. Now, I think that at this particular time, we have all four horsemen on the scene. We have a false peace leader, we have wars, we have economic exploitation and troubles. There's the rich, and then there's many who don't have anything. And then, of course, there is disease and death. That's the fourth horseman. Now we're headed for the fifth, which is not applicable to mankind. Those are martyrs. The sixth seal is probably the first half of the tribulation period, which is the first beast, which deals with, in my opinion, the Agenda 21 infrastructure in place, with NASA and various organizations pretending that the sky is falling and doing all sorts of things with Photoshop as they did at 9/11 with the fake holograms of the planes, and on this goes with fake stuff. Okay? Like the world is spinning around. Fake stuff. Atomic bombs. We'll get into that a little bit later. I've already mentioned that. Photoshop is used for atomic bombs and so forth. That's fake science. The trees look like toy trees in a King Kong Godzilla movie. And the camera's not moving, even though the camera's right in the middle of an atomic explosion. And on it goes with all this fake stuff. That they can split an atom and create power. Nonsense. I don't buy into any of it. They said the fallout from Hiroshima was a mistake or something, because the people went back to work the next day in Japan. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they went back to work the next day. Everybody, basically, as they cleaned up the city. There was no radiation, no Geiger counters, all this. And this is all nonsense. Let's continue. So the Protestant persecution is the first goal of the great harlot and the beast. That's why the Muslims say that Protestants are the enemy, we Westerners. That's why the Catholics said that the Israelites are the enemy, and they also said that we Christians are the enemy because we are Protestants, and it's right there in the Jesuit vow. The communists say we're the enemy because we're religious. The drug cartel says we're enemies because we don't like them selling drugs. Gang members don't like us telling them they can't go around with machine guns and shoot babies in Chicago. A lot of people hate people who don't want you to let them murder and slaughter and do what they want to do. Because we're the salt of the world. We're the salt of the earth. We're the light. I'm the light. And I'm shining it on all these people, and they're not going to like it. They're used to people going along with them. Oh, there's Billy, how you doing? They're used to no accountability, lawlessness. So the Protestant persecution was the first arm of the beast and the harlot. And the Lord lets them attack the church and the church members because it gives them a true testimony when they die that they love the Lord and that they did believe in the gospel and they believed in the promise, in the faith of Jesus Christ, which is the blessed hope, which is a better situation is headed for you, and you're a pilgrim here. That's what Hebrews is all about. And you can't get the blessing of your faith until you end your faith. Well, let's get back to the lesson. So that it was a united effort of the harlot in Babylon and the beast. The mother, and this is the daughter of Babylon. This is the daughter of abomination, murders, worshiping animals, which is essentially what was happening in Egypt, which Moses rejected. That this is an effort, and Pergamos is the first church that became the harlot. Because you have to have a fake church in order to be a harlot. You have to go around and say, I love Billy, but you're running across the street. If they're saying they belong to possibly Jesus one day with a cross in their church, but there's a picture of Mary floating over there, and they're kneeling down to Mary, and God's a jealous God. And let's move on. Pergamos is 300 AD to 2021. With Thyatira, and now we're in Laodicea, it's all Babylon. And the economic engine, is the beast. And what we have is we have the UN, League of Nations, the Illuminati, banking. There is no Bank of America. That is a ludicrous name. All money goes to the International Monetary Fund. It's been doing that for 100 years. There are no banks of America. All your Social Security money, they're taken out of your paychecks, all your money goes directly to a bank in London. They handle your money. They take $20 from you. They make $400 off of it, and they give you back $20.30. And they brag about it. So all your money goes to the IMF, which is the Queen and the Pope, And that big statue that you see in the United Nations building is not playing around. It is a very serious issue pertaining to power and abuse and perversions and the devil. And some of you may ask that question again, why would the Lord allow this and so forth? Well, you see, it all started with Adam and Eve, and what God's doing is he's getting ready to do street sweep cleaning, and God wants the puffer fish to just get puffier and puffier and filthier, and then he just goes and he street sweeps. And the Bible says God's going to do a quick job of all of this. And when you look at the Battle of Armageddon, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at it's all over. As Revelation chapter 16, it is done. The Lord God says it is done, and that means good night. And that's where Jeremiah is going to end his ministry, talking about all of those beautiful things in Revelation 21. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. I haven't gotten to a lot of it. I have about 8 beauty lessons up. There's going to be maybe 50. Who knows? I'm going to spend a lot of time slowly, we're going to walk through this beautiful stuff. I'm going through negative stuff right now, and some positive things on science, but this is all going away. This is all dying. As we get into mercy, we're going to spend a lot of time with David, talking about God's tender mercies. We're going to spend a lot of time on that with Proverbs and some beautiful things in Isaiah. And this is where we're going to park here in this ministry. I will not go back to a lot of what we're going through now. I don't want to show pictures of babies being murdered here in the United States and so forth. I don't want to show it, but I have to show a couple. We have to face reality here. I'm not an ostrich. I'd much rather leave these issues alone. The first thing I'm going to show you is from a thing I gave to a Republican friend of mine who was a staunch Republican supporter. He got angry with me because I told him I'm not going to vote Republican. I'm not going to vote. I told him if I did vote, I would vote Republican because I'm anti-abortion, and Republicans tend to be anti-abortion. But I'm not going to vote. Right now, I'm preaching Jesus and supporting the church. What the government does is not necessarily my business per se. We're out to save souls, preach the gospel, pass out gospel tracts, and build up those who are hurting and bind up the brokenhearted. As far as politics goes, I pretty much stay out of it. And my Republican friend wasn't happy with me, but I told him that I will give you a good reason not to vote Democrat. So I made a flyer for him and gave it to him. I said, you can pass this out all you want to. Here's a flyer of why you shouldn't vote Democrat. Okay? But we're going to talk more about that. So Babylon is basically pagan. The Catholic Church started out with Constantine giving power of the sword and giving the Catholic organization, early Catholic organization, he gave them military powers to gather a military and to torture and kill anybody they wanted to with a sword at this time. There's no guns at this time. So they could kill anybody they wanted to anytime they felt like it. So people who loved to murder really wanted these jobs of being pope and cardinal and so forth. And also get into perversions and freaky stuff because you had power over everybody and no one could question your power. No one could take you to court. You could go across the Mediterranean and slaughter a gazillion people, which they did a few times. Actually, I think early in the Catholic history, they wiped out a couple of civilizations. These people are historically very brutal, and they come on TV with crosses and peace signs, whatever kind of stuff. But that's not what that's the white horse. That's not their intention at all. So Babylon is essentially pagan, has crosses in there, animals, floating women, self-cleansing things. Clean yourself, absolution by scraping your knees and getting them bloody as you walk up to the cross in these edifices and these buildings synagogues they're basically synagogues of Satan. And the point is that Jesus is actually suffering in these so-called masses and so forth. They're actually murdering Jesus 200,000 times every month, every couple of weeks, which is essentially cannibalism. And the number one command is broken. There's gods everywhere. Mary's walking on water. Satan is their friend. They recently said that Satan is the god of the world. And in one of their Easter ceremonies, these people are all over the place. And God calls these people basically goats, especially the followers. I have a movie that has a man kissing the feet and licking the boots of some priest as he's in Mexico, harassing the Incas with Cortez. He's kissing the boots of a human being. It's utterly sickening. So Babylon is riding the world economic powers. And all of this is the distress of the black rider, the white rider, the red rider, and the gray rider. All of these horses of the apocalypse are characteristics of what's happening. And the gray horse is the COVID horse. That's the last horse. And what you can get ready for now is seal number 6. You had 4 events emerge, and now you've got number 6. And 6 is the start of the tribulation, not the great tribulation. Now, both create these conditions of greed and prosperity for a lot of people. There's a lot of millionaires in the world. Millionaires are actually, I think, growing, in spite of the fact that more people are getting poor. See, that's what's interesting about this. And the tribulation period seems to point out that millionaires and billionaires are going to do fine for the first portion of the tribulation period. They're going to still be getting married and having a Macy's Day Parade. So the precipice of the two conditions, is based upon 2 groups of people. There's the master group, who are basically undisturbed by all the earthquakes, the signs in the sky that are the first half of the tribulation, because these are the beginnings of problems. Because there'll always be scaredy cats and people who are nervous, and there'll always be people who are going to just go to the bar and get drunk no matter what the moon does, and take drugs and fornicate and murder. They don't care if the sun turns into black sackcloth. Well, what does it mean to them? So there are 2 different kinds of groups here that are going on. There are those who are sensitive, and they're going to have to get their heads chopped off, because you're going to have to get saved by being beheaded during the tribulation period. America just purchased a couple of thousand guillotines. What for? That's supposedly because of Muslims and so forth? No, the president said Muslims are basically okay. So it's not for them. So anyway, let's move on. So those that are affluent in this early shakeup, and maybe all the way to the late, they're not really disturbed too much by all of this, what's getting ready to happen. Because they're going to have underground things and all, food stored up, and all these natural phenomenon. Some of them will probably be by God, and some of them will be by the devil, using NASA equipment that you paid for. With HARP and all these vibrations they send out, bouncing it off the dome, and they're probably playing with the dome. There's a glass dome they're playing with. They tell you they're doing things that other than what they're doing. I'll give you dollars to donuts that they're trying to play with God's dome spinning and so forth. And God will let them do it for a while, because remember, in Revelation 21, everybody's gone who's a liar and plays games and is filthy. They're gone. So it's kind of like God letting them have their last hurrah. But let's move on. So all engines for Agenda 21, which are the International Monetary Fund, NASA, the Vatican, they're all participating in a concerted effort of hell as they, as they get going, to to get everything ready for all of the things they're going to do, which is signs and wonders in the sky, and who knows what else. And trying to deceive people into believing that the devil is in fact some sort of God, and that you need to worship him, because that becomes a big issue at this time. You're going to have to bow down and worship the devil, probably at the front of the grocery store or something. And if you don't do it, you probably don't get any groceries, something like that. And if you have that mark on you, just like you have, the vaccine now or something, if you have the mark on you, which is probably some sort of skull on your head, or a sword of Allah or something like that, it's something that it usually has something to do with violence and perversion, because the devil loves violence and perversion. So the sign of because there's the mark and there's the number and the name. Who knows which one of them is, The mark is probably something like a skull or something torture or freaky. Who knows? I don't know. I have some ideas I want to share with you right now. So this is a concerted effort, and you're seeing a concerted effort right now. And Agenda 21, if you want to find that out, just Google it, and you can see that Agenda 21 is real. The UN plans on taking over everything, and George Bush and some of these presidents said that the New World Order is coming, and what they're saying is they're giving their sovereignty away. So get ready for it. And Americans are a debtor nation. America's never been out of debt from the American Revolution. And the Illuminati were very angry. The early Illuminati were angry. They were angry with the president because he would not let the banks come there and set up all of their, we want to own all the homes, and we get $140,000 interest on the homes, on a $140,000 home, because all they think about is money all the time. And we had Madison's War and so forth, and the Monroe Doctrine, and all these things that happened that were by these presidents. They didn't like the Illuminati. They didn't like the European banking, and they didn't want the Federal Reserve. They didn't want the IRS. Nothing. All these evil entities that could come and they just rob and steal and take Americans' homes if they're 1 week late on their payments. Take everything they own. That's actually unconstitutional. But my point is that all these evil entities are here. The Federal Reserve is not federal. All monies go to the International Monetary Fund in London, where the Pope and the Queen are in absolute control. Don't get in their way, because God has given them authority. Because God doesn't want you to get too excited and be a TV preacher and get excited about the world right now. You're supposed to be looking for a better place, as Hebrews says, Hebrews 11 and 12, that where Paul said, God has something better for you. See, that's supposed to be the attitude here. It's not that much in the South or in fake Christianity, but for us Quakers, we're focusing on exactly what Paul said. We see a land afar off, not made with human hands. And in the presence of the Lord, tabernacling with the Lord, who we love. That's what this is all about. I don't want to mention the apostasy and fake people, but we have to do it periodically because they're so prevalent. But we're going to focus on us. We're going to focus on us going to the thrift store, giving our money away, having a top economy of middle class. If you go above middle class, you're in the danger zone. I was just sharing with a relative here the other day. You're in the danger zone when you exceed middle class. Look out. Look out. Because a rich man can hardly enter the kingdom of God. So look out. Let's continue with Babylon as a pagan existence. And, they worship, they have crosses in there, they have animals they worship, women are floating around, Mary's floating around, she's got powers as a god, you can cleanse yourself. Jesus didn't pay it all. You give extra money to the Pope and you're cleansed. You go crush a Protestant's head. I don't have that picture. I was going to show that picture. where Babylon and the Catholic Church and Loyola, one of the first big-time devils of the Catholic Church, about 500 A.D. or so. There's a statue of him crushing a woman's head, and he has a halo over his head for crushing her head. This is true Catholicism, and the thing is that if you read the Jesuit vow, you'll see really what's going on with these people. Now they have some goat minions who walk around and go, yeah, I'm Catholic. They don't really know what's going on. They don't know what the plans are with the Pope, what goes on behind economics closed doors with Hitler. I'm going to show you some of that in a couple of minutes. This is a very deep subject, and they don't believe that Jesus paid it all. That's why he keeps suffering over and over again. That's why they love the cross. They don't talk about the resurrection. Catholicism does not recognize a resurrection. You watch their Easter parades, and they're carrying their crosses around in big uniforms and so forth. On Easter, they put it on TV here in the United States. Once again, leave your TV off. They have upside down crosses, and Jesus wasn't risen from the grave. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep crucifying him over and over again. They believe he's alive. It's called transubstantiation. Want me to go into some history of transubstantiation and how they attacked Protestants because they didn't believe in transubstantiation? And Henry V and all these so-called quasi-Christian leaders in Europe and Great Britain, put humans in ovens and burned them alive because they wouldn't go along with the Pope's edict. You must believe in transubstantiation, that Jesus is actually suffering. And I'm not going to go into all that. I go into that a little bit in my Babylon lesson, but I'm going into current events right now, and these things are still going on. And I'm inserting them into science because we're going to talk about the science of abortion. We're going to talk about the science of what's going on as far as military science and engineering. Science just doesn't deal with petri dishes and the development of an animal, which I'm going to get into later on. I'm going to give you a review of my Darwin viewpoint. That lightning struck water and made 10 to the 66 power organism, which strand 10 to 66 power of strands of information that interact, have propellers on the organisms, and they repair themselves, and so on. It happened by water and hitting lightning, or something along those ridiculous lines that's taught in our schools, in our universities right now here in the United States. It's sickening. Let's keep going. So Babylon is riding all of these powers. And it creates a world economic distress of the black rider. The white rider is the person who's pretending to not have any arms, which is ultimately going to the Hebrews in Jerusalem and so forth. But both create these conditions. They're greedy and they're all into prosperity for themselves. It's all about them. The Pope will drive by poor people in a Pope-mobile. They'll drive right by them and tell you to go over here. I don't have time for you. I'm going to a banquet. I deserve the banquet because I'm chosen from God, and I'm not a servant. When Jesus said, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, learn to be a servant. So we know who's telling the truth based upon the word of the living God, and we compare it with what they say and what they do, and we can find out who's the real deal, because the word of God is alive and sharper than any two-edged sword. We can cut through information and slice right through it, and we have perceptibility, okay? That's what we have. Because we're the true saints of God. We're the true followers. We're the true people who seek God's mercy. I'm going to stop right here on my number 8 here. I talked about the two basic groups of people that are going to be alive during the tribulation period, because the rapture has taken place and we should be out of here. And we who are accounted worthy, based upon our humiliation before the Lord and our love duty and our love for the truth, we're out of here. That's the basis of us getting out of here. And the concerted effort of hell and the beast and the dragon, I'm going to let that go. We're going to move on. we're going to get into we're going to get into some issues pertaining to documentation just for a moment. Okay, this is Jeremiah signing off. This should be video number 9 on Science 2021, which is getting into a little bit of politics. What's going on today in your world? Okay. I'm almost done with my reading here. And then I'm going to show some pictures about what's going on in our world. I'm going to have to talk about abortion, and I'm going to mention a few science issues. I'm not going to show the picture of Loyola crushing a woman's head and getting a halo. Supposedly God is going to bless him, and he's finding forgiveness by crushing a Protestant's head. As many of you know, they slaughtered a whole city of people, and they made a celebration at the Vatican for the slaughter of the whole city. Women, children, everybody, because they were supposedly Protestant. And the Pope celebrated that night. This is indeed Babylon and the mother of abominations. Now, I'm done for now. We're going to get back to we'll go to video number 9, okay? Maranatha, we're listening to the voice of the Lord. Shalom. Peace.